Good morning to everyone on the West Coast. Happy midday to everybody on the East Coast. And if you're somewhere in between, good mid morning to you. We are live through Riverside and we are talking on the Guns and Mental Health podcast, sponsored by Walk the Talk America. I'm Jake Wiskerchen, joined by Mike Sodini down in Vegas. Hello. And Jeremy Van Winkle down in Texas. Hi, Jeremy. What's up?
Glad to be here.
Oh, yeah, yes, he's touching his ear and talking into his cufflink. It's Friday, and I don't know when you're listening to this, but we thank you for listening. As always, it's always humbling that people take time out of whatever they're doing to listen to what we have to discuss. And what we have to discuss today is a new swanky device that is going to keep us safer, hopefully. And Jeremy's here to talk about that. Your company, GunLocks, spelled with an X, like the fish stuff you spread on bagels, is not about spreads on bagels. It's about actual locking up of firearms, and I think it's going to be useful to discuss this and flex out some of the trials and tribulations you've had. Mike and I are being beta testers right now for the initial run, which is super exciting because I don't get to do that kind of stuff very often. I just bellyache when I buy the product and then, hammer email the manufacturer back and be like, why doesn't this work? So anyway, Jeremy, why don't you take the floor and tell everybody who you are, what this is, and we'll just go from there.
Yes, sir. I appreciate y'all having me. Jeremy Van Winkle down in Dallas, Texas, and we are releasing our product GunLocks, which is a universal gun lock that is operated by your smartphone. That is essentially at the foundation what it is. I like to think it's in line with GoPro, one main camera with a bunch of different accessories. So we designed a lock that could interchange with an abundance of accessories to lock up any firearm that you have and control the access through your smartphone.
And that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming by.
Jeremy, that's an awesome
We'll
product.
See you next week.
You can find more at gunlocks.com. No.
So what I like about the product when I first met you and heard about it, obviously we heard about you from Mike Bauer from USCCA and told us about you like months ago, right? And then somehow we finally connected. But what I love about this kind of new push is there seems to be a lot of companies coming out that are technology driven. And I've always said this for years, that the gun industry is kind of slow when it comes to the technology side of things, especially when it comes to like accessories. I mean, certain firearms, the design hasn't changed since 1911, right? Like you look at the way this is. And so I love that there's this, because I think that if we push forward into technology and find ways to make firearms or responsible firearms ownership more accessible to youth and things like that, I think it's just better for everybody. But what was your journey to get into firearms, and where did you see like a need for this? Like, how did that come?
So I'm a father of four, and I grew up in Southwest Louisiana, sportsman's paradise. And so I grew up around firearms my entire life, hunting, shooting, everything. So we didn't have a physical safe. We had firearms in my father's closet where I was taught responsible gun ownership at a young age and proper handling, shooting techniques, all of that. But still the accessibility of the firearms just sitting there in his closet. So now that I'm a father of four, I saw that my own children, their curiosity level, how adventurous they are. Your kids ask you why 7 million times a day. So think of that when they're entering a closet and they find something new, a firearm that they hadn't seen before. They want to play with it, want to figure it out. So even if you teach responsible firearm ownership to your children, they're still children. They're still teenagers. How many times do you tell a kid no and they still do whatever the heck they want to do? So that's where the idea came from. I wanted a budget-friendly way to lock up firearms that people didn't have to go spend thousands of dollars on a big physical safe and be able to still enjoy and have the safety and security of firearms in the home.
Mike makes a really good point about the technology because my industry, the psychotherapy profession was technology averse really until 2020. And when the lockdowns occurred, I I mean I bemoaned pretty much everything. There was no good that came out of that, and I knew it. But I did see a potential for a silver lining in my profession, which was that it was going to compel us to get good at telehealth and the telehealth interface and force us to be competent at technology broadly, because forever we'd been suspicious of it and it wasn't helping anybody. So now, yeah, the pendulum has swung a little too far, I think, and we've got like telehealth only platforms that are grifting off of whatever they grift off of to get quote unquote care access to people. But what it did do is it made all the dinosaurs of the profession and the suspicious ones get good at this interface. And then, once the lockdowns went away, if people didn't want to touch Zoom, they didn't have to. But in the meanwhile, we were never going to. And I think that what's happening in the firearms world is, like Mike alluded, the youth are not off of technology ever. Now, I've got my own personal opinion about that, and it's not a strongly positive one. But the fact is, it's a fact. And we have to meet this issue where it is, just like we have to meet firearm ownership where it is, and not try to pretend that there's some magic wand to like make guns go away so suicides and inadvertent deaths go away. So in so doing, companies have to respond to this marketplace that requires technology everywhere. So if you're not into lock and key stuff because you think that's for your grandpa or whatever, and you want something that's going to disable your lock and activate your lock and transfer possession through your phone, well, somebody's got to step up, and you did that, which is very, very cool. So talk a little bit about like entering that realm and all the wrestling that you had to do with even getting the device made, because it's a really cool device, and we're working through the bugs and stuff. No, it's not ready for launch yet, but how did the conversation go? Like, was there pushback? Was there cool ideas that you had to reject because we're not there yet, technologically, or like what was that like? I'm curious how those discussions go among friends and investors and all that.
Well, the market always dictates if a product is good or not. And we have early on, through beta groups and asking the general public, the firearm owners, what they thought about this product, we quickly found that both far ends of the spectrum don't want this product. So I'm not kicking any of these, but I'm just telling it like it is. Your preppers that think the end of the world is coming, and who knows, maybe there's some legitimacy to
Maybe,
it. But
maybe, yeah.
those guys that only believe in indexing, that believe in no locks, guys and gals, they don't want a lock. So whether it's technology or a general purpose lock and key, they don't want a lock, period. So our product didn't fit there. And then on the complete opposite side, you have people that have different color hair than normal. Most of the time it's blue. And they don't want our product because they want gun control. They want us to take away the guns to prevent these tragedies or school shootings or suicides or accidental discharges and injuries and fatalities.
Hold on a second. Hold on. So ad hominem attacks aside, we can characterize the type of person who would resist that. But are you serious when you say that there are people who absolutely rejected the product because they think that guns shouldn't exist, so therefore there shouldn't be an intermediary?
100%.
What? Man, Mike, I don't know if I'm not feigning this at all. I'm actually genuinely shocked. Have you encountered people who go, "No, I think safes are a bad idea because I want guns to go away"?
Well, I mean, Jake, you have too, though. I mean, in a sort of sense, right? Like, there's some people that stand on all guns should go away. Remember when you're wearing the shirt, the Walk Talk America shirt with guns and mental health, and the lady was like, "All guns need to go away," and you're like, "No, you're like." I bet you that lady would say the same thing if you presented her with Jeremy's idea for this lock. Like,
yeah, that's true. Not. That's true. Those are the perfect being the enemy of good people. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'd forgotten about that interaction. That happened in Wisconsin, by the way, when we were up there. I was standing outside in the parking lot waiting for Mike to show up, and I'm wearing my Guns and Mental Health t-shirt with the podcast logo on it. And she's like, "I love that idea." I was like, "Thanks." She goes, "What's it about? Is it, as long as it's not about guns?" And she's all of a sudden she's tripping over her words, right? She went from this very confident statement to, I don't know where I'm going now. And I was like, yeah, we're a pro Second Amendment organization that advocates for mental health access for firearms owners and, without fear of rights restrictions. She's like, well, I don't know about that. That's just that. I don't think that's possible. And she like just tutted her way into the car and like nary a word was spoken thereafter. So yes, I'd forgotten about that because it was such a bizarre interaction. So thanks for reminding me. There are people out there who, instead of embracing a good idea that will help lots and lots of folks, they will rigidly stand on something impossible. I don't know, to keep themselves warm at night or whatever. So anyway, sorry. Thanks for letting me interrupt there. I was just like,
No, you're
what?
good.
Really? They think that's a bad idea, but it's because their idea is more extreme.
Yeah, exactly. So that led us to understand that who is our market and what do they want? It's that middle American. They stand for Pro 2A. They stand for our rights. They stand for pro family. And they want the ability to defend themselves and protect their family in the home. And so it's 2024. And what human with a cell phone doesn't allow their phone to go dead for more than 2 minutes? Nobody. People run faster to charge their phone than they do to get something to eat. So it's that just let me know that the product is in line. The advancements that we're making in the industry are good. So if we can control who we are as a company, our values, what we stand for, and use technology to advance and protect the everyday American who wants to just protect their family, then we've got something great. And so that's where this came from. We're not the ibberty-dibberty companies that give access to the government. There's no back door in ours. It's only unlocked by the user. So we built that going forward to not allow ourselves to have any access to someone's firearm. That's completely controlled by the user. And so taking technology and using it for good in a space where there's little to none, we believe we created a great product that's going to help the middle American protect their families.
On that note, what is your target demographic? I mean, it sounds like a really broad swath of people, but I can imagine that there's some in there who I know. I mean, it's not imaginary. I know because I mean, I might even categorize myself in this group. People who are like, yeah, I'll turn all my data over to my phone and I'll run all my banking stuff through my phone. But I draw the line at serial numbers on my firearms. Like, well, that's already out there, right?
Yeah.
So have you gotten any pushback? Or are you anticipating that type of thing where they're like, oh, yeah, every other aspect of my life, including my known traveler number for TSA, goes through my phone, but not the gun? Like, are those people out there? And are you worried about that?
100% they're out there. Far as being in a database or anything like that, we made that optional in our latest update. We want people to be able to use our product and have the freedom to choose whether they want a serial number logged. Really, we built that so that the customer can keep up with their own firearm, not like we needed it. So we made that optional for them to choose. Hey, do I want to track this? If I've got 100 guns or if I've got 5, do I want to track it down to the gun or by nickname, which is done in the app? So we made that optional, anticipating that there are some that you're their face. People worry about Face ID. Dude, you use your face in your phone every single day. So they know everything about you anyway. Now, do we want to protect privacy as much as possible? Absolutely. We don't share data. We don't sell the data. Any of that is collected is within our enterprise.
So if I register, that goes to where? You guys, some warehouse, some cloud based thing, or does it stay on my phone or what?
Yeah, so all your firearm information stays on your phone. Your name, login, that kind of stuff comes into our cloud-based service to allow us to be able to, if you get locked out or need to change your password, all of that back-end information is housed in our cloud service to help with customer service. If you run into an issue like that, if you're getting a new phone and need to transfer your stuff to your new phone, you forgot your password because you bought it 2 years ago, that kind of stuff. All of the information about your firearms and all of that is stored in your phone.
So all you know, I say you because you're in front of me and on my screen, but to your company, all your company knows is who I am and what device I have. Whether or not it's being used for guns or to lock up medicine or the gate on my fence is irrelevant. Like you don't know that. You just know that I bought a lock from you and you have the power to password reset, just like my bank does.
Yeah. So each device has a UID, a unique identifier to that device, and we see a nickname to that device. So that's how we can help the customer, because the customer is not going to read off a 47-digit UID. They're going to say, hey, my shed or my shotgun, whatever they've nicknamed, my home defense. That's how we can be able to communicate to the customer to understand which lock they're talking about.
Bertie. Unlock Bertie for me. What's Bertie? I don't know. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the echo chamber of gun culture, right? Because I always, as someone who owned a gun company, it was really funny because I would watch like the Instagram, Facebook crowd, or people that are in the forums of websites, and they're the super pro 2A, like talking about liberty and freedom and everything like that. And I, as the owner of this gun company, I'm like, you're such a small group of people. Mm-hmm. That's very loud. But as the owners of these companies, we have to understand that the majority of our customers are these people that are like, I bought one gun, I threw it in a safe, I have every single lock known to man on that gun activated. There were times when I would hear stories about customers of mine, and one in particular, I think of the Shanine Allen situation where she was pulled over in New Jersey, and she had her Versa Thunder 380 in her glove compartment, and the cops couldn't figure out how to even get the gun activated because it had the integral locking system on it. She had every, it was not even a way that I think most people would recommend her carrying that firearm around outside of her home for self-defense. But I say all that to kind of say, for the gun owners that are listening there that are just like super like, I can't tell you my serial number and stuff like that. But then you're also the same person on Instagram showing off that you bought this gun that the government and everybody else can see. But like, not everybody has the same motivation as you. And I think as we, as a culture, can show outsiders, hey, we have all this technology, we have this option, and take it away from just a culture thing, like showing the rest of the world, the anti-gun or the gun ignorant. There are a lot of spouses that are not comfortable with a firearm in the house, and then the other one is. And what better way for a compromise sometimes to make your spouse feel, comfortable or safe? Like, hey, look, I got this gun in the house. I know you hate it, but here's, I got this really cool GunLocks thing. Maybe that puts the spouse's mind at ease. I just think it's a great idea, and I love the thought of the product. Obviously you're kicking it off, but I think there's so many ways that we could use this in defense of the second too. And because let's face it, a lot of people on the outside world, they don't think we do anything but leave our guns, locked and loaded and ready to go for kids to find. Like, they say all kinds of dumb shit, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I'm being transparent, when I was getting ready to build this and presenting this, my own wife was like, hey, you need to do something about the guns in the closet. Because me personally, I don't have a safe. I don't have a large safe, but they're stored in a place where I needed to lock them up or make them more inaccessible. So it all kind of came together, the ideology behind the product from my own experiences. And that's just a side of it for protecting children and protecting my own family. And then we're also making strides to use technology to help in other areas that there's huge issues with firearms.
Stop there. Keep talking.
Well, for like suicide. So 49% of teens commit suicide by firearm. That's an access issue, plus a mental health issue. So I know because I walked down some of these roads in my 20s. I walked some rough roads. And so being able to use technology to prevent access or give a person an amount of time to where they can make a better decision, to choose life, to find help, to speak out to a loved one or friend. Using our product for that is a huge burden on my heart, because every lock we sell, did it prevent a suicide? Did it prevent an accidental discharge? Did it prevent a fatality? So that weighs heavy on me and pushes me to sell more, not from as a capitalistic enterprise, but as a company with a purpose, a company that's driven to protect lives, a company that wants to use technology to protect our community of gun owners, as well as protect us within, as against suicide, against red flag laws, against accidental discharges among children. So it's not only built for storage of firearms. It's not built just for traveling with firearms. It's built to protect. We bought the firearm in the first place to protect, to defend. Now, especially in our society with mental health going through the roof on the crazy side, people are dealing with stuff. We saw this in 2020. It just skyrocketed. So me walking those roads early in my 20s and then seeing that in 2020, you could see it in people's faces as they were dealing with stuff. And so using technology to help combat that is a huge purpose on my heart.
I want to ask you about your tough roads that you've walked, but for right now, I want to address that point about the ERPOs. You mentioned red flag laws there almost as a throwaway in a series of listed opportunities. And when you and I and Mike were talking a couple of weeks ago or so, it was Mike's idea actually, who, when he floated it out, he says, it's possible that we can use this to combat some of the bad policies. So instead of taking away somebody's property, we can make a pitch that the property is secured out of their reach by simply transferring access through the phone. Now, I understand this isn't going to work in every state, because I live in one of those backward, aggressive thinking states that decided that in order to transfer firearms, everybody has to have a background check, and then they didn't bother to write in an adequate Good Samaritan policy into the law. But if we can get that changed, and I have some ideas on how to do that, we can effectively nullify the red flag portion of that by saying, hey, the firearms are taken away. Now the deputies are off the hook, or the local cops or whatever. They don't have to seize property unconstitutionally. I mean, we can debate that, but I'm waiting for the constitutionality of that to get challenged, because due process absolutely gets usurped, in my opinion. We can just transfer them to somebody else's access, because look, you've got 9 guns, 9 locks, and all of them are secured. And as long as this individual who's in question has no access through those locks, we're good. You can't do that with a traditional safe unless you change the code, which could be possible. And I think there's an argument to be made for that. But this is so much more nimble when you have it on a mobile device, right? So talk a little bit about the feasibility of how we can just simply grant access. That was one of the selling points to me, was how do you grant access through the app to somebody else if you're in a remote location and, wife says she wants to go shooting, but all the guns are through my phone, and I'm in, Connecticut giving a talk for Walk the Talk America. How does that play out?
So GunLocks is user-based. It's not device based. So what that means is you've got a phone, but the user is who unlocks it. So in the app, I'm able to share access or deny access through a lock or firearm by simply granting another user access to my digital safe. So just like you said in your example, you're off giving a talk. The wife downloads the GunLocks app, sets up her account. Now she has her own digital safe. Well, you as a user give her user access to that digital safe. Now she can take her phone, her biometrics, whatever she's using, whether it's passcode, thumbprint, or Face ID. We suggest Face ID. It's the most easy to use. Face ID inside her phone. Now she can unlock that app. So going forward into the red flag laws and combating them, there's tons of statistics, but let's just say, Jake, you're having some depressed thoughts, some suicidal thoughts, and your wife has access to your digital safe. Well, if you don't have the power, what we're working on implementing is a button to be able to choose a time to lock out all firearms from everyone's access, or to remove access and just transfer, like you said. So the first option is to remove access from everyone. Now, this is time-based, so it's not like you're never going to get back into it, but we want you to have the ability to get the help you need, whether it's you doing it or through a trusted family member, but to be able to, for you to hit the button or her to hit the button and protect your life. So using technology, this is another way, in backwards thinking. If we look forward to use the tools that we have in our hands, how can we use the tools that we have already in our hands? We're using this every day of our life. So why can't we use this to help protect a life? So that was our thought process behind it.
And this is what's cool about that. So now you're covering the crisis aspect of a family that may have a member, whether it's a kid, wife, husband, the significant other, they're in crisis. Now you can implement a plan, right? Lock the device. But also, I love that idea of having kind of a counter there, because like I know if my wife and I decide we want to go to Hawaii for a week, and we can just shut it down so no one can have access to it. Because I know my daughter shouldn't have access to it unless I'm around, right? You could just do that. So it's got dual functionality in my mind. And then you don't have to use it if you don't want it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you got all three bases covered. It's just there if you need it. But this is the type of stuff I'm talking about when we're talking to suicide prevention organizations and mental health organizations, to be like, yeah, this technology is, you should be recommending this to people, because they're the ones that don't think this stuff exists. And I think they would look at it, the whole industry, totally different if there's like, yeah, they're really working towards covering all their bases, making all these solutions for this stuff. But the timer thing, that's something that Jake and I have been talking about for years when we were trying to get other safe companies. Hey, like maybe there needs to be some sort of, shutdown mode where no one can access it, just for people to kind of calm down and figure out what the plan is. Because that plan could be 6 hours. Maybe it's just a 6 hour thing. You got kids coming over for a barbecue, whatever, right? Like, or, maybe it's my husband goes through these spells because his Lyme disease kicks in and he needs 6 days, because that's usually how long it takes when my husband starts to show the signs that I'm aware of, that I can see, right? The wife can see it, the significant other can see it. And then, okay, let's shut it down for 6 days. Then let's see where we're at. We'll revisit where we're at there. Like, I love it. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited
changes. The possibilities are endless. Now, I was thinking back to non-gun applications. You go out of town, you want your neighbor to, feed the dogs, give access to that one device to the one room or whatever, the shed, so that the neighbor can feed the dogs. You don't have to give them access to your whole house in case they lose the key or whatever. So I love all of this stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, no key. So when we were doing this, everybody was like, "Oh, we need to put a backup key. We need to do this." We decided against it for a couple reasons, but I mean, the lock itself has a 6 month battery. Like when y'all are doing your testing, the button on the bottom, it gives us a couple things. One, it lets us know the firearm user is within arm's reach of the firearm. They're hitting that wake up button. They're there. They have access to it. The other is, yeah, thanks for the demonstration, Mike.
He's showing it to the listening audience who can't see it. He's showing it on the camera, but that means
The
nothing
other
to you.
is,
It looks like a lot.
the other is hitting that button to allow it to go into sleep when it's not in use. So giving an extended battery life before needing a recharge. So using this for multiple things, putting it on the shed, no key. So we passed the gold standard of torsion and strength testing, but we can't claim gold standard because we have no key. So now we need to them to update their standards because we have no key. So
What is
that's
that,
an
an
interesting
association?
thing.
Is that like an association or
Yeah,
something? What's it called?
yeah.
I don't know about that.
Catching me off guard. I can't
Of
think of
course.
it, but it's basically a quality testing. So knowing that a lock is of this quality goes through this amount of testing, and there's rules based off of that.
So it's like saying Underwriters Laboratories for electronics or something like that.
Sure.
Got it.
Well, mainly focused in locks.
Right. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but there's an industry standard, and you met that, but you can't claim it because there's no physical key, which tells me something about when those standards were written and how they have failed to progress. Because
Think about the future.
we're only going that direction, right?
Yeah.
And you got different locks
different
that would go in. Yep.
And there's a cable too. There's like a 14-inch cable and a 20-inch something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, this product is $99. You're talking about a safe that's $3,000-$4,000. So we wanted this to be budget friendly and to be able to universally lock up any firearm or multiple firearms. So that's why we included all this in this main kit. And then as we progress, we're introducing more and more accessories that you can swap them out.
So let me ask this, because the shackles, so it looks like a padlock, and there's different size shackles. What do you envision using the shackle for? Because I don't see myself putting a shackle through my chamber. You know what I mean? The cable is self-explanatory, but what do people use the shackle for?
So gun cases, boat cases,
Case. Okay, got it.
handgun cases, and then on some like trigger pull. So some of these, we have a new accessory coming out. It's a traditional trigger lock that goes in front and behind the trigger and still clicks into the lock. But the trigger depth before it reaches the back of the trigger guard or the extension of the trigger depth, there's enough space between 8mm or the 5mm to run a shackle behind the trigger to prevent depression. So that it can be used in that case as well.
That's awesome. All right. So you walked this dark journey, which I would love to hear about, and I'd love to hear the redemption thereafter too. But let's back into that, because you also teased that you would use the app to provide more than just a lock unlock system, and we kicked around some ideas. Share some of that for the listeners, would you?
Yeah. So I want this to be not just a place to, like you said, locking and unlocking, but a place to serve our audience with possible help they need. So for one instance, traveling with firearms, we're integrating into our app when you're going into a new state to get an internal alert to allow you to read over and understand that state's laws as you're traveling with firearms. Another thing, common safety tips, practices, training videos, those are incorporated. And then what you and I talked about, giving people resources for mental health awareness, tips to understand where you're at in the journey. Um, Believe me, I wish I'd had more resources as I walked my own journey on how to get out, or somebody leading me down that path. There were people in my corner, but not having resources or having them walk through it themselves to understand where I was and what I needed. So giving access to that to the general public through an app that's already free. There's no subscription to our app, but a place to have those resources plugged in can become more serving than just unlocking and locking.
My idea of resources is anything we generate in the content realm, like videos and this podcast and so forth. I think could be very edifying for anybody who's dealing with anything from serious mental illness to just curiosities. And if we can nest that inside the app, even as a click through to the original content, I think you've at least just sparked a conversation. But what was your journey, and how did you come through it, especially in the face of what you would refer to as not having any of those resources?
So I was raised religious, and looking back, I can tell you right now, the number one reason why I walked the roads that I'm about to tell you is I had no identity of who I was. I was looking for acceptance um, in any area that would give me acceptance. Started in entrepreneurship early. Um, at the time, right before my fall, I had a trucking company. Just doing great for myself, but seeking out that acceptance led me to heavy partying, which led to cocaine use, which led to meth use, meth addiction, and then beyond. Um, which in turn, I lost everything. Um, Lost businesses, anything in here you can imagine that you had of value, it was gone. The only thing that I didn't lose that I'm most grateful to God for is my beautiful wife. Um, we we had just got pregnant, and that's when it kind of just started spiraling downhill. My son was born, and I went off the deep end. I'm embarrassed to say most people, when they hear they're having a child, that's when they clean themselves up. But I went the complete opposite. And it's because I didn't know who I was. I was searching, I was seeking. And that identity I'm talking about is an identity in Christ, knowing that I'm his son, knowing that he shed his life for me. And so I had none of that. It was all based out of fear, not love. And I can go deep into that, but man, as terrible as this sounds, I became so addicted. I lost everything. I was stealing to provide funding for the habit. Very, very deep. I can go way into that, but came to, what am I even doing? What am I even here for? And I was consuming multiple times. I consumed over an 8 ball, 3.5 grams of meth at one time just to see if I would die. My heart stopping, falling out in the middle of the woods around a bunch of drug addicts, to waking up next to a bunch of drug addicts standing over me. And that led to Christmas 2017. We were living in my parents' house. My wife, I've got a son. Now I've got a daughter on the way. And my wife came to me, and I was sitting on the floor at the end of the bed. I mean, I had nothing. And my skin was gray. I had long, nasty hair. I weighed 180 pounds. I'm 6'5", 260 pounds right now. So take off 80 pounds of me right now. I was just a shell of a man sitting there, sores all over my body and my face. Skin was gray, near death. And she said, Jeremy, if you don't change, I'm going to leave and take our son, our children. So January 8th, 2018, I walked into the church and I had meth in a bag and I had paraphernalia. And I wrapped it up in toilet paper and I walked in straight in front of everybody in that church, all the way to the front. And I took that drugs wrapped in toilet paper and I set it on the altar and I quit cold turkey. And 100% God met me there and took that addiction from me. Over the next several weeks, my wife had to take care of me as I was detoxing, laid in bed, couldn't get out. She was there for me. But the next thing that had to happen was an identity change. I had to separate myself from no longer an addict to someone new, someone without addiction, someone that's rebuilding their life. I could no longer associate with my past. I had to make that choice that fast. I had to understand that fast. Looking back now, I wasn't planning that. I wasn't making those choices internally, but it just happened. But now that's part of my purpose, is to look back and teach people what I went through, tell people of that journey, because it's important. You know, you've got right now in America, people 30 years clean from being an alcoholic, still going to AA meetings saying, hi, my name's Jeremy and I'm an alcoholic. Where's the identity change? So sorry, I can get emotional and fired up about this because this coming January will be 7 years. I changed my life and God changed my life, gave me this opportunity. And I can look back and I can see that journey and know that he had a purpose for me. He had a plan because his hand was there protecting me. I don't know what that is fully. I do believe that building products like this is my 1%, what I bring, because I completely enjoy it. But on the other hand, other side of that is there's 98 million Americans that are addicted. The government's not leaving them out. They're just giving them more ways to be addicted. So there needs to be a rise in men that are biblical based kingdom men that are showing people how to get out, how to change their life, how to find help, how to find the right help. And so I believe that somewhere in my future, as I build fruit in my life and evidence that I've changed beyond just what I'm telling you, to where people can see it on a larger scale so that they'll listen. That's where I'm at. That's what drives me. That gives me purpose on how passionate I am to build products that serve people.
I have a lot of questions personally and professionally. I'm going to start with one because it centers on emotional functioning, which I, teach regularly, and it has to do with the shame. So I think everybody listening, ourselves included, can identify things where we've done stuff of which we're not proud. And I'm curious how you move through the shame and the guilt by seeking this new identity, and then in so doing, what does it mean to, beyond I'm a son of God, I'm a follower of Christ, what does it mean to have an identity in Christ? Because I think that's a very broad, ill-defined concept that a lot of people just completely miss. So talk about how you got through the shame. Talk about what it means to have an identity in Christ.
Well, first off, there's grace. And grace took that shame. Did I have to face the consequences and society based off of my decisions? Absolutely. I had the court systems. I had probation. I had to go pee in a cup. I walked through it just like every other person would. I had to face the court systems many times based off of decisions that I made during that time. But there was something deep inside me that I knew I was created more than just ruining and throwing away my life to addiction. I could feel it. And so I know Christ came and he gave his life for our sins, and that he gave us grace, which is the power to do things his way. So that removes shame from our lives. Now you have to make the choice to allow that to work, because just like you made the choice to do it, you have to, just like you would make the choice to forgive someone, is the same choice that you're going to have to make to allow grace to work, to remove that shame, to allow that new identity to be formed. But to have an identity in Christ, I mean, he created us in his image. From the foundation of the world, when man and woman were first created, he said, let us make man in our image. So if we're created in the image of God, we have power to bring heaven on earth. We have power to accept his identity of a creator and go create in the world. He sent his son to die for our sins. To accept that is taking on the identity of a God that so loved us that we can go love our neighbor, love him first, then go love our neighbor, love our spouse the way he loved us. So using love to create that new identity of, this is who I am because I was created in his image. He knew me before I was born. He knows the hairs on my head. And it takes a radical person, to me, to accept that. Because it takes complete 100% faith to know that a being, spirit man, he created the world, then created us in his image, and then created us to bring heaven on earth. That's my faith in God is ever learning and ever new revelation as you grow. You don't get it all at one time. It takes walking it out step by step, day by day. And there's things I'm still working through, understanding, just like I mentioned before, my purpose. Why was I created? Every man wonders that. So understanding and walking that out to know, why did God need me on this earth in 2024? What did he have planned? What was my purpose for creation? And so having that identity to know that in the beginning, I was created in his image, to be able to bring heaven to earth, to bring his glory, so that everything I do in life gives him glory and brings people back to him. That's my definition.
You're describing a humility that it requires vulnerability, and not a lot of us are very good at that, because we think that we should be in charge. We want to control things. We want to be intellectually in command. We want to have blueprints and clear-cut paths and all that stuff, and that's not how this works. And I think the other thing too is that it sounds like a magic bean. It sounds like January 8th, 2017, everything changed, right? It's like poof, new man. It's like, no, there's a process, and the process ever continues, which continually requires the humility and vulnerability to receive feedback and corrective action and to change. So I'm curious, you said you were raised religious, but you didn't have an identity in Christ. That's probably going to strike a lot of listeners as weird, because how could you fall so far off the wagon only to come back? Right? Like, how does that work?
There's a difference between religion and relationship. So I was religious. I didn't have a relationship. So everything I did was based out of rules, religion, do this or don't do this, instead of having a relationship of me wanting to please my Father, knowing that I can't because I'm human and I'm born in sin, but knowing that because he loved me and he sent his son for me, I'm doing everything I can in my power to please him, to live a life that's pleasing, to live a life that brings him glory, to live a life that disciples others to see his glory in me. So you mentioned humility. I was 25 when all this started, and had this arrogance about me before. And, I was an entrepreneur. I was doing my thing. I drove the jacked up truck. I looked at, all the stuff, right? And when I came out of this, I had no vehicle. I was living in my parents' house. I had a wife that I couldn't support. I had a son that I couldn't support. And I had a daughter now that was born that I couldn't support. So I had to go back in the workforce and I had to go sell somebody on why they should hire me. But I had to have enough humility to allow me to go back into that workforce and start over, understanding that I'm at ground zero again. And I've had to do that since then. We don't always get it right, but
No, we don't.
I mean, I'm just thinking, I was telling the story yesterday. Somebody was asking me, like, what's the first thing you did? And I don't remember a lot in that time frame just because of the heavy, heavy drug use and coming out of that. I still don't remember. I ask my wife sometimes, hey, do you remember this? You know, what happened here? But I think it was about a month to 6 weeks after the withdrawal period was over. So we're talking about roughly 9 weeks. I had a job again. I had, before that, I was working in the industries in Southwest Louisiana as a pipe fitter. And so after that, I went right back and got back into the workforce. And I climbed right to the top of that company within a short amount of time. They gave me a work truck. I had no way to get to work. They went and bought a brand new F-250 and gave me a vehicle to get back and forth to work. I had to go get my license straight before I could even accept the vehicle. I had to go buy insurance before I could even accept the vehicle. I had none of this. So it was, I walked in there with transparency, said, this is who I was before. This is what happened. And here's who I'm trying to rebuild. And they gave me the job. They gave me the opportunity. I performed and it just went on from there.
It's a cool story. I have so much more that I want to pick your brain about, but I'm going to flip over to Mike because I see him reaching for his mute button.
Yeah. I was going to say, so you start a company, a lock company for Firearm. I mean, you need capital, you need things like that. Like, so you said you got back in the workforce, you built your way up, got your groove back, right? Probably started making some money. And then you had to hit your wife with, I got a crazy idea. I'm going to build a locking system for firearms. Like, what was that like?
So we have to back up one more step.
Okay.
So I had, after the workforce, I went back and I'd started another business in the lift kit wheel and tire business back in my hometown. And I had the idea to create a interlocking system for power sports, motorcycles, ATVs, UTVs, all of that. And the reason I had this idea was because during my rough path, I would steal those power sports to feed that drug habit. And so I built the same system for the power sport industry, and it's called Tougher, TUFR. And I infused every dollar I was making at that tire shop to get that company going. Took investors, and it led me to Dallas, which there was some changes made, and I still own a percentage of that company. But my wife saw me make that transition to be able to bring a product to market, to come from an idea, to make it a reality, to win patents. She saw all of that happen. So when GunLocks come up, she believes in me, man. She believes in me more than I believe in myself sometimes. I mean, last night I was just telling her some of the challenges I'm facing right now. And she's like, you got it. God's got it. Just keep going. You know, she's a huge encourager for me. I'm very, very grateful for my wife. It'll be 10 years we've been together in April. And so, man, that's why I got a little emotional. But because she's important to me. But to go into her with the next product idea wasn't a huge thing. I still had no money because of things that had happened. But I went to investors, told them about it, started building the app, building the prototype. And then it's taken, we're launching about the 12-month time frame and going to market. And then I've got about 6 more product ideas after this.
Did I hear you correctly say that you decided to create a locking system to prevent thieves like you used to be from stealing ATV? Okay, all right.
So when I first launched it, my whole messaging was, I want to protect society from the man I used to be.
Hmm.
And so that's what led me into creating products that serve people, not just another product, not just something else to buy, but to actually have purpose and servanthood behind the product itself.
Yeah, that's I mean, there's a parallel there to Zephyr Wellness. Anybody who's listened to me long enough knows that I bellyache a lot about our lack of reimbursement rate from Medicaid, Nevada, and come hell or high water, I'm not leaving the Medicaid network, even though they have just completely dragged their feet on bumping that reimbursement rate. And through faith alone, I've hung my hat on culture of the organization over salaries because I can't pay what other people pay. Um, but I'm not going anywhere because as I watch company after company after company who takes Medicaid and serves the Medicaid population just fold because they've put dollars over service, my percentage of the pie chart, it keeps increasing. And I have no idea how we keep paying our bills because I budget us at more than what Medicaid pays. And it's, I mean, it's a power not of my own that this is happening. And so I identify very closely with what you're saying there. It's like service to the community. It's why I keep saying I'm trying to work myself out of a job. If we can produce enough free content for people to exercise this stuff in their own kitchens and workspaces so they never have to come through my damn door again, then I'm gladly going to change from doing therapy to doing something else. And I don't know what that looks like. The day will probably never come, but in the meantime, I can keep working toward it. And that speaks back to your I am. Like, what's the identity? I am not a therapist. Therapist is just something I do. It's just something that serves the community and generates revenue and pays the bills and all that stuff. But if God calls me to be something else, occupationally, then I'll go be that. But I also know that it's temporary and fleeting. And I think that's why we must anchor ourselves in an identity and something bigger than we are that is permanent and not fleeting and doesn't change with the whims and fancies of culture or society or the marketplace. So I appreciate what you're saying there. I want to ask you though, when you had that moment at the foot of the bed and your wife was, basically laying down the law, do you believe that it was her, or do you think the Holy Spirit worked through her to connect with you? Because I don't know why she wouldn't have left. Like that's an atypical story.
Yeah, 100% Holy Spirit.
Like, how did she have the strength to stay?
I don't want to tell too much of her story because it's her story to tell.
Yeah, that's fair.
But her family is riddled with drug use. Her own father left when she was 2 for the same drug. And here I am, this man that got her pregnant, now married, got a kid together, and I'm going through the same thing. To this day, I don't understand how she had the strength to stay. So I know, and I've told her this a while back, I know that God kept us together and we walk this together so that we can be an example for others. Because it's not just drugs. It's infidelity and all kinds of things. It's because of lack of identity. I mean, I think I said this on our other call. It's why we're having a problem with 3,700 genders or whatever the number is today. It's the root cause of what's going on in America. We have stepped away from in God we trust as the foundation of who America is, to now we have this false identity or lack of identity that is allowing us to cross paths and do stuff I never dreamed we would see. But it is what it is. So what does that mean? That means that biblical men have to stand up and speak and provide stages or products for the people to hear, because I believe they're searching. I don't believe they're just doing it out of lack of, just complete rebellion. I believe they're searching. So someone has to be a voice. And if God created me to be that voice, if he allowed me to walk those roads to be a voice, because there's only two things that can happen to you, in my opinion, is God ordained or God allowed. So if I was allowed to walk those roads to be a voice in the future, here I am. Send me. So, and that's where these products have stemmed from. I believe it's going to create a platform. Because let's face it, unless you have fruit in the world's eyes, and what I mean is the world is general public, unless you have fruit financially in your life, success on a major level, they don't want to listen to you. That's why they don't want to listen to most preachers, because they don't have success outside of a church. So if there's someone that has success financially that they can look to, that is bold enough to speak truths, then I think they're searching enough to want to listen.
That's meeting culture where it is, and not trying to get culture to meet you where you are. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's one of the miserable realities, I think, of our time, is that people have turned lots of things into idols that shouldn't be idols. But through those perceived idols, if we don't idolize them, we just work through them. Like, social media. Oh, you got a zillion followers on social media. It's like, yeah, but I don't care. But through that, if I can spread a message of hope and joy and peace and tranquility and optimism, then awesome, right? Yeah. All right. Do you want? We're a little over an hour now.
Real quick, talk about the thank you card. You want to talk about the thank you card?
What
We're
about
on that subject. We're on that subject. So, you had a nice little thank you card in here, and the nice little message, on the card. What's the story behind that?
Mike's holding something in front of the camera again, but he's refusing to describe it because he doesn't understand.
I want him to talk about it. I want him to talk about it.
So this is me understanding that this is coming in my life, that purpose, that speaking. And so on the back of that thank you card, this first one, our first run, we use Joshua 1:9. And the main part of that is be strong and courageous. And as we grow, we have a mixture of those that we want to incorporate. But what it's allowing us to do is make a small amount of impact with every purchase. How many times have you seen that, Michael?
Never. First time.
So when you flip that card and you read be strong and courageous, understandably, most in the firearm industry are males. Now, over the last 5 years, we have seen a high increase of the female gender coming into the firearm space, and it's pretty much the dominant one in new gun purchases over the last 5 years. So knowing that it's a male-dominated industry, we need men to be strong and courageous, not in themselves, but to know who to be strong and courageous in. And so exactly what I just talked about is men standing up and being a voice of truth. Joshua 1:9 is God speaking to them, and Joshua speaking to his mighty men as they go into the promised land. And they're going to face cities with huge walls. They're going to face giants in a land, but they're walking into a land that God promised them. And so he's telling them, be strong and courageous. And so it's time to walk in to a new generation of men that are standing up for truth. So that's where that verse originates from. I was taught that through a men's group that I go to every Saturday. And I felt that it was very fitting in a male-dominated industry to place that in there for people to go, hey, that's different. I need to think about that. So that was an opportunity, and I'm glad we took it.
You want to talk about any of the other 6 products you got in mind, or do you want to keep those under wraps?
I'll tell you about one that's coming real soon. It's called Filter. but the idea came from it's not the firearm industry, but the idea came from these units that pump essential oil or fragrance into AC systems. And what we built was a small 3-inch square that brads onto your home furnace AC filter. And it's filled with essential oil. So every time the air kicks on, it's pumping essential oil through your whole home for $14 versus the high end system that you have to purchase.
That's
So
that's going to eliminate a lot of plugins.
yeah, so no more diffusers, no more fragrance in the rooms, no more candles with carcinogens. Um, when the smell goes, because it's designed to last 30 days ish, um, depending on the evaporation rate. So it's a reminder to change your filter every 30 days. So we're protecting people's home furnace. Reminder, I need to replace my filter, getting rid of these products that are causing health issues, and giving people a solution for a fragrant home that's pure essential oil.
I'll tell you what, there's a there's gonna be a big market for that. I mean, and commercial too, because I got a 6,000 square foot building here that we're operating out of with 4 different furnaces, and that would be much more useful than my wife running around changing all the the plugins.
Yeah,
That's pretty
and
awesome.
then we'll have a subscription on that where you can just order
Yeah,
them every month for a discount. But that's launching in November.
right on. Who's making the smells? Where does that come from?
It's all in our factory overseas.
Cool. I can't wait. That's really exciting. All
Yeah.
right. How do people reach you? Um, how do they get a hold of you on social media or just the website or what?
Yep. First GunLocks, gunlocks.com. But any other is jeremyvanwinkle.com. First name, last name.
What's the time frame? I mean, when do you see this product possibly? I know we're in the beginning stages, right? There's things that need to be worked out, changes to be made. You got more eyes on it. What's the time frame you're thinking for a complete launch of this?
Second week of October.
So probably right
Okay.
about when this podcast drops, actually.
Yep.
Cool.
Second week of October. We'll be fully launched. And so right now we're completely wide open, going through our final beta testers and getting all the feedback as we get ready to launch.
Awesome. Well, Mike, time to close.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling I kind of know where he's going to go with this, but we like to ask all of our guests in closing, what do you do to tend to your mental health?
Number one is prayer. Number two is reading the word. I have a mentor in my life who tells me often, stay vertical. And what he means by that is get in the word. Get in the word, that's God speaking directly to me through revelation of what I'm reading, his word. So that's the number one thing I do. I live a life of transparency. This is number three. Whether it's my wife, whether that's men in my life that I have a relationship with, brothers, mentors. I'm open about where I'm going through because I'm constantly seeking growth. I ask my mentors often, what am I not doing or what am I not doing right? Let me know because I want to grow. So that's where I'm at.
Good for you. That was good for me.
Yeah. No, it's always great to hear the different, no one has the same answer. So it's always good to see the spectrum of what people are doing. But good on you, man. I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a
Thank
good
you. It was a
story.
pleasure being here.
I think it's going to inspire a lot of people too. Hopefully the product itself takes off. That would be great. And along with it comes a whole wave of new interest in that type of safety mechanism, but also the messaging behind it, which is, it's okay to screw up. There's always redemption on the other side. And we don't have to be defined by our mistakes or our successes, because the definition comes not from us or from this world, but from the God who created us. So Thanks, man. Really appreciate you making the time, and I look forward to continued partnership in the future. That's a good place to end. So on behalf of our Noggin Notes, that's my other podcast. No, I forget what I'm doing here. On behalf of our Walk the Talk America family and everybody else who supports the cause, we wish you all great mental wellness. Bye-bye.